George Orwell's 1984 opens with a striking and gloomy depiction of a dystopian world. It's a cold day in April of the year 1984, and the clocks are striking 13. The novel begins with Winston Smith, the protagonist, returning to his dreary apartment in Victory Mansions. The setting is London, but not the London we know. It's part of a superstate named Oceania, which is ruled by the party under the figurehead Big Brother. As Winston enters his flat, he is immediately confronted by a large poster of Big Brother with the caption, "Big Brother is watching you." This sets the tone for the omnipresent surveillance state that characterizes Oceania. The party monitors its citizens through telescreens, which are present in every room and public area. These devices not only broadcast party propaganda but also allow the thought police to keep an eye on every individual, constantly scrutinizing them for signs of dissent or nonconformity. Winston, a 39-year-old man beset by a varicose ulcer and living a meager existence, works at the Ministry of Truth. His job is to alter historical records, ensuring that they match the party's official narrative. This is part of the party's broader strategy to control information and maintain power, encapsulated in its three slogans: "War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength." The introduction vividly portrays the bleakness of life in Oceania. The buildings are dilapidated, rationed food is bland and insufficient, and the gin is cheap and poor-tasting, yet people consume it to escape their grim reality. The atmosphere is one of perpetual war, government surveillance, and public mind control, enforced by the party. Despite the oppressive environment, Winston harbors thoughts of rebellion. He is disturbed by the party's control over truth and reality, although expressing such thoughts is dangerous. As he settles into his flat, he takes out a diary, an act of defiance in itself, and begins to write. This act of writing is a rebellion against the party, a way for Winston to assert his individuality and inner reality. The introduction also briefly touches upon the principles of Newspeak, the party's language designed to limit the freedom of thought and expression. Newspeak is a tool for controlling thought, as it eliminates the words and concepts that might encourage rebellion or heretical thoughts. Through this introduction, Orwell sets the stage for the exploration of themes such as totalitarianism, surveillance, and the manipulation of truth. The world of 1984 is one where history is malleable, truth is what the party decrees, and individuality is suppressed under the guise of collective good. Winston's character is established as a vessel through which the reader experiences and understands the horrors of this dystopian world. The introduction is crucial in establishing the mood, setting, and primary concerns of the novel, which delves deeply into the consequences of absolute power and the fragility of human freedom and truth in such a world. Part 1 of 1984 introduces readers to the bleak, oppressive world of Oceania and its protagonist, Winston Smith. In this dystopian society, the ruling party, led by the omnipresent figure of Big Brother, exerts total control over the populace, employing advanced technology and psychological manipulation to suppress individual thought and enforce conformity. Winston Smith, a 39-year-old man with a frail physique and a face marked by a varicose ulcer, works at the Ministry of Truth. His job involves rewriting historical records to align with the party's ever-changing narrative, effectively erasing and remolding the past. Despite outwardly conforming to the party's dictates, Winston harbors secret doubts and dissenting thoughts. He purchases a diary, an illegal act, and begins to record his true feelings, an act of quiet rebellion against the party's authority. The setting of Oceania is characterized by its three main states, Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia, perpetually at war with each other. The society is strictly hierarchical, divided into the inner party, the elite ruling minority, the outer party, to which Winston belongs, a larger but still subservient group, and the proles, the lowest class, kept in poverty and ignorance but largely free from party surveillance. The party's control is all-encompassing. The thought police monitor citizens for any sign of nonconformity or dissent. Telescreens in every home and public place broadcast propaganda and conduct surveillance. The party's slogans, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength," encapsulate its philosophy of doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. Winston's life is mundane and rigorously controlled. He attends the mandatory morning exercise called the physical jerks and participates in the 2 minutes hate, a daily period where citizens express their hatred for enemies of the party, especially Emmanuel Goldstein, the supposed leader of the underground resistance. During one of these sessions, Winston catches the eye of O'Brien, a member of the inner party whom Winston suspects to be a secret rebel. He also notices Julia, a young woman working in the fiction department, whom he initially distrusts and even fears might be an informant for the thought police. As Winston writes in his diary, he reflects on his past, his marriage to an overly orthodox party member named Catherine, and his deepening hatred for the party. He recalls a significant memory where he came close to pushing Catherine off a cliff, a thought that frightens him due to the violent emotion it evokes. The novel delves into the principles of newspeak, the language designed by the party to restrict freedom of thought. Syme, a colleague of Winston's, explains how newspeak is systematically reducing the number of words in the English language, making it impossible to express unorthodox thoughts. Winston's contemplation of rebellion grows as he explores the Prole district, seeking a connection to a past before the party's rule. He purchases an antique paperweight in a second-hand store, symbolizing his desire to connect with a more authentic, uncontrolled reality. Part 1 ends with Winston's increasing consciousness of his inner rebellion and his contemplation of the inevitability of being caught by the thought police. His alienation from the party's oppressive regime grows, setting the stage for the subsequent events in the novel. This section of 1984 establishes the novel's central themes: the oppressive power of totalitarianism, the manipulation of truth, and the struggle of the individual against an all-consuming state. Part 2 of George Orwell's 1984 delves deeper into the protagonist Winston Smith's rebellion against the party and his relationship with Julia, which serves as a major act of defiance against the totalitarian regime. This section begins with Winston and Julia's developing relationship. They first secretly meet in the countryside, away from the surveillance of the party. Julia reveals herself to be a rebel at heart, despite outwardly conforming to the party's expectations. Their relationship is not just a romantic and sexual affair. It represents a significant act of rebellion against the party's control over their lives, particularly its stance against sexual relationships and love. Winston rents a room above Mr. Charrington's shop in the Prole district for their clandestine meetings. This room becomes a sanctuary for Winston and Julia, a space where they can express their true selves away from the party's watchful eyes. Here, they share intimate moments and discuss their views on the party. Julia is pragmatic and rebellious in her own way, but less interested in the broader implications of the party's rule compared to Winston. As their relationship develops, so does Winston's rebellious spirit. He becomes more interested in the Brotherhood, an underground resistance movement led by Emmanuel Goldstein, the supposed archenemy of the party. Winston reads parts of Goldstein's book, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism, given to him by O'Brien, an inner party member whom Winston believes to be a secret rebel. This book explains the structure of society and the mechanisms of control used by the party, including the perpetual war as a means of maintaining control over the populace. Winston's understanding of the party's oppression deepens. He learns about the concept of doublethink and how the party manipulates reality. The book explains that the goal of the party is absolute power for its own sake, not for the betterment of society. This realization solidifies Winston's hatred for the party and fuels his desire for rebellion. However, their rebellion is short-lived. The room above Mr. Charrington's shop is revealed to be a trap set by the thought police, who have been monitoring Winston and Julia all along. Mr. Charrington, the seemingly kindly shop owner, is actually a member of the thought police. The couple is arrested, and their sanctuary is destroyed. Part 2 of 1984 is critical in illustrating the illusion of freedom in a totalitarian regime. The relationship between Winston and Julia serves as a narrative tool to explore themes of rebellion, the nature of resistance, and the invasive power of the party. Their affair, initially a source of hope and freedom, ultimately leads to their downfall, demonstrating the party's relentless control over individuals. This part of the novel builds up the tension and sense of inevitable tragedy, setting the stage for the final, harrowing conclusion in Part 3. Part 3 of George Orwell's 1984 is the climax of the novel, detailing the capture, imprisonment, and psychological torture of the protagonist, Winston Smith, ultimately leading to his complete subjugation to the party's ideology. The part opens with Winston detained in the Ministry of Love, the most feared place in Oceania, where individuals suspected of disloyalty to the party are tortured and re-educated. The stark, oppressive environment of the ministry, with its windowless cells, relentless lighting, and constant surveillance, is a stark contrast to the false sanctuary of Mr. Charrington's room. Winston encounters several other prisoners, including his neighbor Parsons, who was turned in by his own child for thought crime. This highlights the extent of the party's control over individual lives and the pervasiveness of its surveillance and indoctrination. The central figure in this part is O'Brien, who reveals himself as a loyal servant of the party and not a member of the Brotherhood as Winston had believed. O'Brien becomes Winston's interrogator and torturer. Through a series of brutal physical and psychological tortures, O'Brien systematically breaks down Winston's resistance and independence. The goal is not merely to punish Winston but to reform him and make him genuinely accept and love Big Brother. One of the most harrowing aspects of this part is the Room 101, where prisoners face their worst fears. For Winston, this means facing his phobia of rats. In this ultimate torture, O'Brien exploits Winston's deepest fear to finally break his spirit. Faced with this terror, Winston betrays Julia by begging for her to be tortured in his place, demonstrating the complete destruction of his individuality and loyalty. After his release, Winston is a shell of his former self. He has been released back into society, but he is fundamentally changed. He spends his time at the Chestnut Tree Cafe, a shadowy place for broken-down rebels. He is physically and psychologically shattered, showing no signs of rebellion or independent thought. The novel ends with Winston's complete acceptance of the party's dominance. He meets Julia one last time, and they both admit to betraying each other and no longer having feelings for one another. The party's power to destroy love and loyalty is fully realized here. In the final scene, Winston acknowledges his love for Big Brother, symbolizing his total reprogramming and the triumph of the party's control over the individual. This conclusion is tragic and chilling, demonstrating the party's capacity to crush the human spirit and enforce absolute loyalty. Part 3 is critical in Orwell's exploration of totalitarianism, the nature of power, and the fragility of human resistance under extreme repression. It illustrates the terrifying extent to which a totalitarian regime can enforce its will on individuals, eradicating personal rebellion and rewriting the human psyche. The novel's ending is a powerful statement on the dangers of unchecked political power and the loss of personal freedom and identity. The conclusion of George Orwell's 1984 is a poignant and powerful ending to the novel, encapsulating the full impact of the totalitarian regime on the individual's psyche and spirit. It is a grim testament to the overwhelming power of the party and its ability to crush human resistance and reshape reality. In the final chapters of the book, we see a profoundly changed Winston Smith. After enduring brutal psychological and physical torture in the Ministry of Love, Winston is released back into society, a broken man. The rebellious spirit he once harbored is gone, replaced by a hollow acceptance of the party's dominance. He spends his days at the Chestnut Tree Cafe, a place frequented by other subdued and broken individuals who have also undergone re-education at the hands of the party. Winston's transformation is complete and tragic. He has lost all critical thought and independent will. His feelings for Julia, which once represented a profound personal rebellion against the party, have been extinguished. When he unexpectedly meets Julia again, they both admit that they betrayed each other during their respective tortures and that their feelings have changed. This encounter starkly illustrates the party's success in destroying not just rebellion, but the very capacity for human emotions like love and loyalty that defy party control. The novel concludes with Winston's complete indoctrination into party ideology. He listens to news of a victory in the perpetual war, feeling joy for the first time in years. He has come to accept, and even love, Big Brother, the figurehead of the party and symbol of its oppressive power. The novel's final sentence, "He loved Big Brother," signifies Winston's total surrender to the party's ideology and his acceptance of its version of reality. Throughout 1984, Orwell explores themes of totalitarianism, surveillance, and the manipulation of truth. The conclusion brings these themes to their logical end, the complete subjugation of the individual to the will of an omnipotent state. The party's victory over Winston is not just physical but psychological, demonstrating the terrifying capacity of such regimes to control not only actions but also thoughts and feelings. Winston's ultimate defeat is not just the loss of his individual rebellion but the loss of his humanity. The party's power extends beyond forcing obedience. It reshapes individuals' identities to align with its doctrine, eradicating dissent at its root. The novel ends without any hint of hope or redemption, underlining Orwell's warning about the dangers of totalitarian governments and the catastrophic loss of freedom and individuality they can entail. The conclusion of 1984 is chilling and dystopian, leaving the reader with a profound sense of the destructive power of totalitarian regimes. It serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of freedom and the human spirit under oppressive rule, and the ease with which truth and reality can be manipulated by those in power.